Hey, you guys, welcome back. I'm very excited to have Korrie Johnson, the Good Book Mom, back with us again today. She's been on the podcast before, always has so much great information. I can't wait to talk to her again. So, Korrie, welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, Leslie. Thanks so much for having me.
You are welcome. I am glad you're here, and this is a pretty special month, so I hear.
Yes. So last year, Good Book Mom established Christian Book Month in April. And the goal of Christian Book Month really is twofold. One, to just spread the word to Christians, like there are so many good, solid books to be read written by Christians.
Mm.
And then also, the other end of that is to encourage believers to be involved in their public libraries, which I know some shy away from. But we're going to talk today about ways that we can do that effectively.
That is amazing. So Christian Book Month is something that you have really started, spearheaded. It's your baby there. How and we'll probably double back to this at the end too, but just right off the start, how can we as Christians, as moms and dads, even as other brands, get involved and kind of help promote this so that more people know that let's actually make this a thing that goes beyond just those who have followed you for a long time.
Yeah, that's my hope that it's not just a Good Book Mom thing, that it continues to grow, and that it's an opportunity to reach Christians with good books, but then people through our public libraries. So I would encourage people to have a book club during the month of
Mm.
April, read a really awesome Christian title together. And we're going to be talking about specific things we can do to get involved in our public library. But making sure that the believers in your life are aware of just some really solid titles. You can do a book club at your church. You can do maybe do something where you invite some believers and some non-believers.
Yeah.
Use that as an opportunity for some outreach as well. And you can share on social media as well. Just use the hashtag Christian Book Month. And people can find it that way to show people what you're reading for Christian Book Month. And I will see those because I I follow that, so I want to see all those awesome books that you're reading for Christian Book Month.
That is great and really exciting. You mentioned though the libraries and kind of how a lot of people I guess shy away, fear, don't want to go in there because it's libraries have taken a hard left turn in a whole lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is very different, even than when my kids were younger. So, can you let's start there because Christians should be engaging with books all year long, obviously. So, how can we as
Mm-hmm.
believers actually utilize the library better? And how did the libraries get where they are today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there is a real fear from a lot of believers about bringing their kids to the library because of displays that are often there or books that are being promoted that, look shiny and pretty, and your child goes to grab it and you realize that there are other motives behind certain titles. And so a lot of Christians have sort of just given up on their public libraries, and I completely understand why. What's going on in our public library system is that for um, for somebody to become a librarian, they need in most states to have a master's degree from an ALA accredited university. The ALA is the
Mm.
American Library Association. And so, if you don't have that specific master's degree, if you don't have a master's degree from an institution that's accredited by the ALA, a lot of public libraries won't even look at your application. They
Wow.
want you to come from one of those. And so, most of those programs out there are ALA accredited. But if you know anything about the ALA, it is incredibly liberal and leaning harder every day in that direction. And so their programs are following in those footsteps. And I've talked to a lot of Christian librarians who have said that in their experience, those programs, the people in charge of those programs, don't have a problem making those who don't share their views feel very uncomfortable and unwanted. And
Wow.
so we just don't, one, we really don't have any Christian universities that offer this degree because the ALA has certain requirements that their
Mm-hmm.
program needs to meet to be accredited. So, one, we don't really have biblically solid colleges offering this degree, universities, excuse me. Um, and then, secondly, the believers who do choose to go into the field at a secular university often feel so bombarded with
Wow.
things that attack their faith and having to sort of set their worldview at the door, as you will. There's a lot of required courses for LGBTQ literature. And so few Christians make it all the way through, especially in the past 10 years. That's really, I mean, that specific aspect of it has really turned hard. And so we just have few Christian librarians to begin with.
Yeah.
Um, and, the librarians are the ones who are ordering the books. They are sort of shaping what they want their library to look like. And so when we have very few librarians that are believers, that's definitely going to affect the system. And the Christians that do make it through, they become a public librarian. That pressure definitely continues
Mm.
amongst their colleagues. All of the um, material that they're given, like from the ALA and the school library journal, are all very, very liberal leaning.
Wow.
And so it's just a lot of constantly being barraged with ideologies that are not your own. And then also 83% of librarians are female. And so if a believer does make it through there, a lot of believers who are women, when the time comes to have children, they choose to stay home.
Right. Right.
And so the amount of, I mean, if you have a Christian librarian, I mean, thank the Lord, because that is such a blessing. They're just they're hard to find now.
That is so interesting. And I actually want you to expand a little bit more on how the libraries function, because I think that getting educated on that is going to be really, really helpful for people, especially as I don't see this path going in any other direction. I see us getting deeper and deeper and deeper into this. So actually arming ourselves with an understanding of what the system is, how it works, will then help us better understand how we can impact it and how we can actually um, work within that in a way that is, safe for our children.
Yeah, absolutely. What's interesting is that I think people are sort of waking up to the reality of what's happening and the power that the ALA has over our public library system. And there's actually some legislation right now that's on the table in Georgia that will be interesting to follow. But we do see some systems starting to separate themselves from the ALA. And so, like, the possibility that there could be programs that are not ALA certified that are taken seriously may be on the horizon. We
Oh,
shall see.
good. Good,
Yes,
good,
yes,
good. So you're saying, when you say there are systems, you're talking about like library systems, like
yes,
we have the Greenville County Library System. So you're talking about those type of things where
yeah,
they're starting to see beyond just ALA master's degree certified librarians.
yes, yeah. And they see the head of the ALA is a very interesting woman who has made her um, Marxist ideologies very public.
Wow.
And I think some people are now seeing that. Even people maybe who fall center, who aren't believers, are sort of
Right.
seeing how hard of a direction the ALA is taking toward the left,
You know,
and are playing around with maybe we don't need that accreditation.
right, right. I think that we see over and over, we see it in education, we see it in really entertainment, we see it across the board. There are a lot of people who are not believers, but there is a moral necessity to protect children. And I think that a lot of the direction that some of this ideology is trying to go full force really, really quickly is not a direction that a whole huge percentage of people, believers or otherwise, are going to be comfortable going.
Absolutely. So it will be interesting. I'm keeping my eye on that what's happening in Georgia, but it will be interesting to see. I do hope that is a trend,
Yeah.
um, because it would be great. I mean, and to be ALA certified is incredibly expensive for a university to begin with, and then
Mm,
you also have to be able to supply faculty who are who have credentials from certified program.
right.
So it's sort of this whole domino effect, if you will. So to be able to sort of get past all of that, and just have programs that teach teach a master's degree in how to be a librarian, like that, that's what my hope is, that we get to that point beyond the ALA. But we shall see.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'll be watching that. I didn't even realize that I should be. So I appreciate your shining a light on that, because I think that's going to have a really, really profound impact on families, on education, on a whole lot of areas. Because we do, that is such a great resource. A public library is a great resource for us. And if yeah, it's definitely worth really, really focusing in and seeing what's going on there. And I think that for a long time, at least my generation of moms didn't pay a bit of attention because maybe it was a slow slide and maybe we knew to be careful, which we did, but we weren't accosted as soon as we walked in like the younger moms are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think that right now, sort of, there's this overarching view that we need to just abandon all public
Hmm.
libraries. And really, I mean, one, you are most likely paying for those via your taxes. And
Right.
so you do have a say as a patron. And I think that, so if we want to jump into some of the ways that we can just really easily be involved with our public library to engage, to change that environment.
I would love to because again, this is something that I don't think that a lot of people have put a lot of thought into, and we tend to react a lot of times when something starts going wrong. We just go the other way. We just like
Right.
abort, abandon, whatever. But you're right. If there are strategies or ideas that we could do to truly impact, it would be better for everyone. So I look forward to hearing what kind of things that you have seen work or different ideas that you have, knowing very well how the system works.
Yeah. So, and I mean, I have to preface that every library, even within a system, every individual library is going to be a little bit different.
Right.
They're going to have slightly, I mean, the staffing obviously is going to be different, but they're going to have slightly different rules. Funding's going to work slightly differently, just depending on the library or the system. And so the things I'm going to share, they're not going to work for every single library, but I think they actually work for a majority of
Hmm.
libraries. And if one thing doesn't work that I'm going to suggest, another might.
Good.
And so you sort of have to know your library, though, to be able to assess those things. So the easiest first step, I say easiest meaning like it's not a difficult thing to do, but it's a time consuming thing, is to
Okay.
form a relationship with your librarian.
Hmm.
um, and I understand, like, if you don't feel comfortable even bringing your children into the library, that in and of itself can seem daunting.
Hmm.
um, but if you are comfortable enough to bring your children, and my children know, like, when we go to the library, you can look for what you'd like, but mom or dad always has the final say on if we
Right.
bring something home. And even if we do bring something home, and then we realize, oh, actually, maybe this isn't the best, like, mom and dad still have the final say on that. So they know, going in, that just because something looks appealing doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best for them. And they know why. We talk about, worldview. And
Hmm.
so doing that up front with your kids, preparing them beforehand. So if you are comfortable bringing your children to the library, forming relationships with those librarians, just like any other relationship in your life, I mean, somebody's going to be willing to stop and talk to you and listen to what you have to say if you have a relationship with them
Right.
first.
Right.
And so, I mean, personally speaking, my librarian, I have a very small library, um, only two full-time librarians, but I know them both very well. They have incredibly different worldviews than I do,
Mhm.
but I mean, I love to go and to chat with them about books. You know, talking about books is a good talking point. But they know exactly like where I stand on things. They know that I'm a Christian. I actually had the head librarian do an interview with me one time, just talking about
Wow.
Christians and librarian, and he was willing to do that because we have a relationship.
Right.
Because you know, I've tried to be intentional with that relationship, um, and remembering that it's very easy to see your librarian as the enemy,
Yes.
especially if you have like a very, very liberal system. But we have to remember that, you know, it's not flesh and blood
Mhm.
that we fight against, and see those librarians as image bearers. That's what they are. And even when we feel like they are enemy, you know, Scripture tells us to pray for our enemy, pray for those who persecute you, love your enemies. And so, I mean, if we think about when we think about the word enemy, you know, like this is a small scale maybe, but still, I think sometimes then we justify, well, they're not like a big enemy, so I don't
Right.
really have to show, you know, but still, we need to approach them with love and respect, and care about them as the image bearer that they are.
Absolutely. Well, and those relationships actually give you so much more of a foundation to have the conversations that could possibly impact change, than just going in a combative way, which is
Right.
what the way that we would generally approach an enemy. And I actually think back to when all of the drag queen reading things were happening, so often it was protest and anger and everything going in, rather than, you know, you, and I'm sure this was happening behind the scenes some as well, but how much more effective would it be to already have that kind of a relationship to try to kind of ward that off before it gets to, you know, on the news with big two, you know, both sides have their gloves on and, you know, they're just duking it out there.
Absolutely. Being able to talk to your librarian as another human being, not
Right.
as the enemy. Yeah,
Right.
such a huge thing. So that's, I mean, probably the biggest tip that I could give.
Mm.
It does take time though. It takes time to develop a relationship. And I mean, and praying for an opportunity to share the gospel with your librarian. They're a human being who needs the gospel. You know, I mean,
Right.
when we get down to brass tacks, like that's really what they need. Um, but some really practical, easy steps. The first thing is that most libraries in their budget have money set aside for patron requests. Now, not
Mm.
every library, but a lot of libraries do this. And so, and some of them even have it on their website and people don't even know about it. But either check your library's website or ask your librarian, do you take patron requests? I would love this title. And you can request, this is part of Christian Book Month too, like you can request Christian books to be in your public library.
Wow.
Um, I, I, I have had success in my very small but liberal public library with getting several Christian titles in. Um, because really, the public library is supposed to reflect its community.
Right.
And so the needs of the community are supposed to be met by a public library. That's part of their goal. And so if the librarians are continually having requests for Christian titles, they are more likely to order those. But
Mm.
some libraries, it's just like it's all you do is go on their website and fill out a form, and they buy the book. And so
Wow.
it's just a matter of being informed. Like, what does my library offer? Do I need to sort of jump through some more hoops and convince, or is it just I fill out a form and they buy it?
Hmm.
Because some libraries, it's as easy as that.
That is really awesome, because I again, I imagine that so many people don't even know that that is an option. Because I honestly, I had never thought about it. And there are certain conversations that I get in on the podcast where I'm like, I am an old mom, because things are so different now than when my kids were young. They still, I'm sure, had that. It wasn't as simple as just go on the internet and do it at that point. Things, so that there's been a big difference in that since my kids were young. But that is fascinating. Another thing that I was thinking of, kind of doubling back to that relationship that you were talking about, the discipleship opportunities of modeling love for someone your kids know, because you are preparing them going in. They know that you don't agree with what's going on there. But if you can not agree with what is happening and still love the individual who is at the epicenter of it, you are really modeling Christ's love for them in a powerful, powerful way.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. How much will that speak to your children? That we're
Absolutely.
not just hearers of the word, but doers.
Yep.
So yes, yes, I could not agree more with that. What a testament that would be to your kids. Definitely.
Yeah,
And
that is such an opportunity. So we've got the relationship, you've got the opportunity to actually request titles. What are some other tips that you have for us to really impact change at our libraries?
yeah, an even easier one is simply checking out the books that are at your library that you want to stay
Hmm.
at your library. Um, Checkouts are the lifeblood of library books. And so let's say you request a book and it's and they do purchase it. Make sure you are checking that book out, and let me say, whether or not at that moment you have the time to read it.
Okay.
Whenever I go to the library, I go grab a title or two that I know I'm not going to read, but I want that checkout to count because I want that book to stay on the
Hmm.
shelf. So usually yearly libraries will go through and cull books that haven't been checked out. You know, they order what books just didn't get checked out at all, and those ones are either donated, sold, disposed of, whatever it may be. And so, keeping books that are good at your library, it's just as simple as checking them out. Very
Wow.
easy to do. Yeah, yeah. So every time I go in, I grab one that I want to see stay there. And I've had several parents say, well, if I see a book that is on display and it's not the kind of book I want my child to be looking at, I will sort of slip it somewhere else, do something like that. And I would actually encourage you not to do that for a couple of reasons. One, if a librarian finds that book out of place, it actually counts as a checkout
Oh, wow.
because that book has been moved and somebody has shown enough interest in it. It's called an internal checkout, depending on the system. But and so you're actually checking that book out essentially if they find it in the wrong spot. Um, if you put it in a spot where it goes sort of missing, libraries will often buy another one. And
Hmm.
so then there'll be two copies there at some point. But also we don't want to interact with our libraries in sort of a sneaky way,
Yeah.
or have our librarians when we walk in the door think, oh, what's going to go missing this time? You know, we want to keep those interactions honest. And so the best thing to do is just avoid them. And if they are not checked out, that's when they will be gotten rid of. So don't touch those icky books. Just leave them there.
Yeah, yeah. I think that there's definitely a testimony of element of that too. Like you were noting, when we come in, we don't want the librarian to automatically think, mm-hmm, something's going to go down now,
Right.
because that is not um, r- representing our faith or our Lord well at all. And so we want to make sure that as we're building those relationships, as we are conducting ourselves, as we're modeling what a believer looks like for our children and for everyone watching, we want to make sure that we are behaving in a way that actually focus or points to um, an upstanding, honest interaction with others, and trusting that God is big enough to protect our kids, but also, He's got power over the libraries as well. And we've got to, at some point, actually trust that, he's not out of control of all of this.
Yes, amen. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So I know we're probably running short on time. For Christian Book Month, I'm going to be offering all of these points sort of in a little more expanded form on my
Awesome.
website, free, just for anybody to come watch those videos if they want more. But super quickly, other ways that people can just engage is to not just request titles, but have conversations with your librarian and ask for certain types of books. Like, I'm looking for a novel without foul language that has positive family connections, or something like that. Like, describe the kinds of books that you're looking for,
Hmm.
because a good librarian should note those things. Um, and then the other sort of tying into that too, another thing would be to get your friends, get other believers to do the same, because there's
Right.
always strength in numbers. And so if you have other people also requesting, books like this, wholesome books, books that don't have foul language, good representations of family, if those things are being requested often, the librarian should take note of those things, because, as we said before, the library is supposed to reflect its community. And so if your community is being actively involved, the library should reflect that.
Well, and community is honestly what us homeschoolers do really, really well. So, banding together in groups that we are already connected, co-ops, field trip groups, whatever, there really is strength in numbers, and a coordinated effort goes a long way to show what your community really wants. Like you noted, that is a great, great point. Well, we are getting low on time, but and I'm so excited that you're going to be really breaking this out a lot more for people. I think it's going to be so helpful and so impactful going forward. So, for the rest of this month, where can people look and what can they expect, as far as rhythm and that kind of thing to get these ideas and this content?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I will have the information that people, if they want to hear more about this, just on goodbookmom.com. That's my website. And then my main social media platform is Instagram, but I do have a Facebook page as well, which I will be sharing lots of ideas for Christian Book Month, lots of encouragement, lots of books to read. But you can find me at either of those at Good Book Mom.
Okay. And will those, if they miss it here in April, will they be able to still access the ideas? Because obviously these are still going to be good in June, July, whatever. So will those still live on your website, or, is there a way that they can
Yes.
get them even if they miss April?
Absolutely. Yeah. The idea of Christian Book Month isn't that this only occurs in
Right.
April. It's that we remind ourselves and then get other people on board, so that for the rest of the year, we continue to do these things. So April is just sort of the reminder every year. Yeah, let's be intentional about this all year. But those, you'll be able to get that information on my Instagram, my Facebook, or on goodbookmom.com.
Fantastic. And I assume that if we search hashtag Christian Book Month, we'll get not only all of that great information, but some really good book recommendations as well from others who are reading during that time. So
Yes,
that
yes,
is
absolutely.
another good way to engage in this.
Definitely. Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Korrie, thank you so much for spending your time with us today. I always learn so much about an area that I'm definitely anemic in, and I am so grateful for that. But thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me on today. It's just been a pleasure, Leslie.
It always is. So the rest of you, thank you guys for joining us. I imagine that you too have learned a lot of stuff that you didn't know, maybe haven't even thought of. So I encourage you to go to goodbookmom.com, check out the resources, the ideas that she's giving, get involved in this in a very constructive way. Follow that hashtag Christian Book Month. I'm excited to see what other people are reading. So I'll be checking it out. I hope you will too, and post those books. Let's see. Let's help each other out here. So go to goodbookmom.com, get all those tips, and I look forward to talking to you again real soon.